Well, Governor, welcome back.
It's great to be back. And this is a much cooler room. This is a great place. I was practicing with a hockey team out here.
Is that right?
We just got back from Mebane, North Carolina, where we just made a great announcement for a Japanese company that's bringing their candy factory. And it's their first international investment outside of Asia, and it's going to be in Mebane, North Carolina. So we just announced almost 100
Well, that's
jobs.
great. That's great.
It's good news.
Another member for NCBCE.
That's right. This would be a good one to do, too. Yeah, they want to get involved. So, in fact, it's very crucial that we work on the international companies because they often come from cultures where they don't get involved. It's all up to government. And I think it's very wise to approach the international companies and kind of let them know our culture is once you come, we want you involved, especially in education. So that's great.
Absolutely. So, Governor, it's been a busy 18 months for you.
It has been.
Wow.
It's been great. As an old friend of mine he said, enjoy the moment. And I'm enjoying the moment. I'm having a great time.
Well, let me just remind our members, if I could just take a point of personal privilege here to just read off the list of things that you've gotten done. And I have to read them because there's a full page here.
So, you don't have to do that.
I want us to know what you've been up to. So, number one, raising the base teacher pay from $35,000 to $35,000 by 2015-2016.
Well, let me talk about that.
Okay.
Let's talk about each one of these
Sure.
things. One thing that we recognize is we have a lot of teachers, especially in the rural areas, that had been making literally $30,000 for the past 5 to 9 years with no increases whatsoever. And the entry-level teacher pay in North Carolina is unacceptable. It's not competitive, and our attrition is highest during those first 4 to 6 to 7 years. That's when we get them, and that's often when we lose them. And what we want to do, Eric Gucan is here. Please stand up, Eric. He's fantastic. And Sue Breckenridge is just doing a great job. We wanted to come up with a concept in which we make teaching a career, not just a temporary stopover. And this is why we came up with a concept called the Career Pathways Plan. And instead of just giving one large pay increase 1 year and then not having another pay raise for another 4 or 5 years because you can't afford it, we wanted to come up with a concept in which you give a base pay where within 2 years, no teacher will be making less than $35,000 a year, regardless of where they are in the state. But beyond that, we wanted a step plan. Instead of 30-some steps that we currently have, we'd have 6 steps. 6 steps in which 4 criteria would be evaluated. It wouldn't be just based upon experience, but that is an important criteria. One is experience where you get wisdom. And hopefully, once you get wisdom, you don't repeat mistakes. The second criteria in determining future pay raises, which the superintendents helped bring to us. We didn't do this. They brought the ideas to Eric and myself. The second criteria is leadership. You know, when you go to a high school or to an elementary school, there are certain teachers that step out and help other teachers. And right now, it's basically voluntary, where a principal asks them to help, but they're not rewarded for that leadership capability to be a lead teacher. Well, you know, in corporations, I come from an engineering company, Duke Energy, for many years. We had a lot of engineers who wanted to make their career being an engineer, and yet the only way they could get a promotion is to become a supervisor or manager, when in fact we needed them for engineers, and a lot of them might not be good supervisors or managers. So we want a promotional opportunity for teachers so they can become leaders of other teachers, and their leadership skills are evaluated by the principals and by the superintendents and other teachers. The third criteria is the market value of their degree and of what they're teaching, and looking at the attrition rate of what they're teaching, because right now math and science teachers are the hardest to keep. If you go to small colleges right now, I see my great friend from the small college or community colleges, it's the technical instructors that are hardest to keep. Well, guess what? In any industry, if they're hard to keep or they're hard to recruit, what do you have to do? You have to pay them more. versus other employees. I come from recruitment. I used to be a recruitment manager and engineer recruiter. Some years I pay electrical engineers more than I paid civil engineers based upon the market value. That's just the way it works. Even though they're even doing the same job often, you've got to pay based upon the market value. Another market value that we want to look at is some schools are harder to recruit for. It might be a rural area, it might be an urban area, but it's hard to attract talent due to numerous reasons. Well, if you have a plant somewhere in North Carolina or the nation that's hard to recruit talent and you can't get someone to come, what do you have to do? You have to pay them more. Maybe the cost of living is higher. Maybe it's just difficult to move people to that area due to other factors. You have to pay them more. So these are the factors that we're looking at. And there's one other factor we're looking at, that's performance. How's that for a change? Is that when we all went to high school, we all knew who the good teachers were. Everyone knew who the good teachers were and the bad teachers were. And it was usually based upon performance. And if you go ask a principal right now, who are your good teachers? They'll tell you right away. They'll tell you these are the top teachers that I want to lose. Some of them have 1 year's experience, some of them have 30 years of experience. Well, you ought to give the principal some flexibility on rewarding teachers for performance, on how much improvement, continuous improvement, are the students making. Right now, almost none of those factors are considered in a long-term pay plan. So I've kind of stepped on the toes of the right and on the left. The left doesn't want it. They want everyone equal. And the right now, my Senate wants to, with all due respect, they want to give one big pay raise to everyone. And I don't think that's a long-term plan, and we're trying to implement a long-term plan. So that's the whole concept right now.
And you spent some time talking about it. I'm very excited by the plans that you've announced, and I view them to be strategic. I view them to be tactically fixing some issues that you committed that you'd address early on when you talked to us last year. And I view them to be sustainable. They make a lot of sense as a business person.
I think it applies, by the way, Scott's here from the community college system. I think the same concept applies to the community college system, where we need to give flexibility to the presidents of the community college on how you distribute the pay, or to the university system.
Well, and that's the point I wanted to ask you about. We are in a diverse state. How did you really address making sure that the individual communities got what they needed out of the program?
Well, I think
Did they have input to it, or?
Absolutely. We did not, listen, one thing I've learned as governor, and keep this a secret, do not tell anyone, but I am not an expert on everything. Do not tell anyone that. Of course, as soon as I got elected governor, everyone asked me my opinion on everything. I learned after you don't get elected, they quit asking your opinion. You'll find that when you're released for your job too. No one's asking your opinion anymore. But the fact of the matter is, I go out and I surround myself with people who are experts on positions. They educate me, and I challenge them. I'm going, what if this? And I challenge them on their numbers. I challenge them on their policy. I challenge them on their concept, including Eric, who went to Harvard, and I still try to challenge him, and I do. And then I make the best decision I can. But the experts are those closest to the customers. And to the teachers, and that's where we worked with the superintendents and a teacher committee and people who had a national perspective like Eric, and then they presented me the different proposals, and we debated the proposals. And this is the proposal that we presented, but it wasn't made in a room and then suddenly announced. It was presented to a lot of people beforehand and given feedback. And by the way, not everyone's happy with it. That probably means it's a pretty good proposal. So that's the way we have attempted to do it. I believe that, and this is my philosophy coming from my own political party, and sometimes we contradict ourselves in this, just like every party and individual contradicts themselves. I believe that we need to give as much independence as possible in education to local entities. And the decisions and the rulemaking is not always best out of the state capitol. Now, some people like more centralized control. I like more decentralized control, but there's a disadvantage in that too. There's, at times there's inconsistency in application, You're going to have some rogue areas out there that don't do good work. It's the same decision you have to make in corporate America of how much decentralized should your organization be for your managers and how much central control should the general office have if you're a larger company. We're going through that same debate in education, in medicine, and in several other areas right now that are on my plate.
Terrific. One of the things that seems to be a focus.
You can keep talking about all the things we accomplished, though. But
Well,
no, I don't have time to.
I'm kind of going through that.
I like to be able to talk in depth as opposed to sound bites.
No, that's fine, and I'd like you to tell us a little bit about you increased funding for pre-K as well.
Yeah, well, all of us know. I mean, the statistics show that if a young child gets into school at 5 or 6 years of age and they have had no access to reading or to any basic math, they're already behind. And once you get behind in first grade and once you get to third grade, and if you're still behind in third grade, there's a good chance you're going to be a dropout. You might fake your way 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and then by the time you're 16, you drop out. I mean, the stats prove it. And so we did increase funding for pre-K. Aldona Voss, most people don't realize, but pre-K is actually out of Health and Human Services Department, a $20 billion department that Aldona Voss is a director of, and she's one of the most incredible leaders. You won't believe it from reading the editorial pages from Raleigh or Charlotte, but she is one of the most dynamic, intellectual, thought-provoking leaders in our state. And she's working for $1 a year and working 16 hours a day. Wow. And I hate the criticism that she's getting. I read a Charlotte Observer editorial today that was just ridiculous. But she is actually also in charge of pre-K. And part of that's the health and safety of these young kids. So it's kind of in a unique area right now. And we're even looking at reevaluating that, including Aldona at this point in time. But pre-K is crucial. To continuing that investment, especially for the poor, underprivileged kids that don't have access to parents who may be helping them or materials that may be available in the home. And that's the people we really need to target.
Well, as a former recruiter, and you certainly know that business is always looking for new talent, and to be able to get started very early gives us confidence that we'll have a pipeline later when we need it. So we do agree with that.
That's crucial.
So
that's the number one question that Sharon Decker and I get when we're recruiting companies, including the Japanese company we just recruited. They go, do you have the talent? In fact, we had one company in the Burlington area that we successfully recruited that we were competing against Georgia and South Carolina, I believe, in Tennessee. They actually put an ad in the newspaper before they made their decision in each of the 4 areas to see what talent would apply for jobs, and they reviewed the resumes, which was the first time I'd heard of that, and that helped make their decision. And I might add, Scott, the community college in there responded extremely well and got people to respond to the ad. So we happened to see the ad, and we made some phone calls. We said, better get some applications of that one. And they got them, and it was with talented people, and that was their major decision factor, which was very, very interesting. You see this especially in manufacturing.
You made a point the last time we were together, and it stuck with me, where you talked about welders. And you said, we have a need for welders. We think about, these big careers in college, the traditional college education, but yet there are jobs for people who are in trades. I'm curious about, and just thinking about our community college folks here today, stakeholders as well, what's being done in that area to make sure that we are targeting the right kind of education for the kinds of needs that you see developing across our state?
I think the last time I talked to y'all, we were in downtown Raleigh. I remember the room, I don't remember the building.
Museum,
yeah, okay. And I recognize then it's still an issue, but it's getting better. There's been at times a disconnect between commerce and education. And the reason I say that, a year ago we were the 5th highest unemployment rate in the country. North Carolina was the 5th highest unemployment rate in the country. By the way, now we're not even in the top 35, which is pretty good news for North Carolina. And we've made some tough Even when we were the 5th highest, in fact, we dropped to the 3rd, we were beating California and Nevada, and that was it. And then we jumped over New Jersey. That was the best we were doing. That's not something to brag about. What I was finding out, I'd go to employers and they were saying, we have job openings, but we can't find the talent. And people aren't accepting the jobs that we have opened. And I was hearing this over and over again. And if it wasn't just sound bites or rhetoric or people angry. They were going, we have job openings and we can't find the talent. And what we're finding is in our high schools, our community colleges, and our universities, something the business community, this is why this group is so important. The business community has got to work closely with the educators and tell them what talent you need. So you can direct the education curriculum to what you need and what will get the kids jobs when they graduate. And I just cannot stress to you the importance of groups like this to stay connected. And if you're getting a bunch of people who are graduating from any of our 3 or 4 different silos of education, and they're not meeting your qualifications, whether they have writing skills or math skills or mechanical skills or technical skills, whatever it might be, IS skills, then you need to talk to your local superintendent, your local community college president, and your local universities and go, what are y'all doing? I'm not getting the talent. And where's the courses that are helping me find the employers to keep me in business? And I just cannot stress to you more. That's why it's important that the business community and the commerce community and be connected with the education committee and vice versa, that the education community hear directly what you need. And then, by the way, it's good for you to hear some of the challenges of the education community at the same time. And part of their challenges, Scott has told me this many times, is they can't keep their technical instructors because the business community keeps stealing them.
Oh, gosh.
And then we can't afford to pay. We get in a competition. And I'm finding this out in DHHS. I can't keep nurses in DHHS, Aldona Voss, because the hospitals pay much more than state government nurses. I'm talking 15 to 20% more. So it's a tough situation.
I've got a little news for you. You might have heard this already, but we actually, you challenged us last year, and we did something about that challenge. 2 of our members, Gerber Collision and Nationwide Insurance, did have a conversation with the community college down at Fayetteville Tech.
Good.
And they said, we need people that can do repair. People have accidents, they file claims, we need a repair to satisfy the claim, but we need people that can do that. And by the way, there's a lot of military folks down here that need jobs. Let's do something about that. They formed a course, and they are now filling a pipeline with needed talent to go do that work.
Yeah. Let me tell you, part of the problem, because I'm throwing stones at times, whether it be the community college or our own schools, part of the problem was the politicians. Our formula for the schools was rewarding cheaper classes with larger volume. And then the more students you got, the more money you got from the legislature, because it was based upon the number of students, or as I politically incorrectly said, my butts in seats, was determining the amount of money someone would get. So the incentive for the community college or even our universities right now is give the courses that attract students, that are sexy or fun or exciting, because that's what many students are thinking about. And yeah, I'll go take the history of rock and roll or whatever, and that'll be fun. Plus I'll get a good grade on it, but it won't get them a job. But it's a cheap course to give, and it'll fill up, as opposed to the auto mechanic course is a very expensive course to give. Mm-hmm. And you have fewer people getting in it and fewer graduates, but the graduates, 100% of them will get jobs. So we've got to relook at the political formula on how we redistribute our money, and we're beginning that process. Scott and I have been working very closely together, and frankly, we also need to work closely with the universities in that area too. And, but some of these institutions are very hard to turn, and that's the tough part, and that's where I need your help right now.
And we're at the table, so we appreciate that for sure. I want to be mindful of our time, and I know you've got a busy schedule. What I'd like to do, though, is I would like to give us an opportunity to have some of our members ask questions. And Mike Mitchell over here, I'm going to pick on first because he came up to me last time and said, you know, Andre, you ran out of time. I wanted to ask the governor a question, so.
I thought I had a memo that Mike Mitchell wasn't going to be allowed to ask a question. I've got to talk to my staff about this. This was.
No, sure.
Yeah, I
Is it
thought.
on?
It says it's on, but anyway, so I'll just speak up. So I'm used to doing that since I'm a lawyer. But thank you again for being here. I appreciate that. You may have answered this already, but you know, we do have a lot of bright, talented people that are coming out of our school system right now. But the business community is still struggling to find the skill sets that it needs to satisfy its workforce. So what can we do to actually help the teachers solve that problem?
First of all, I think it'd be great if y'all come, I'm brainstorming here with you. I think it'd be great if you invite the teachers to the workplace sometime and let them see the workplace and let them educate them on what they're looking for. Because you've got to remember, most educators, no education, and that's where their entire experience is. I got my teaching degree from Catawba College and student taught. And my other experience at that point in time was summer jobs in construction and things of that nature, but then most of those graduates go straight into teaching. So they don't have the chance to go visit a manufacturing plant or an IS system or whatever. And I think that's one way. And then you've got to get the people who are developing the curriculum to help develop the curriculum, help select the curriculum, or at least be a part of that process. And I think, and by the way, help keep the standards high too. I know there's a big debate going on Common Core right now. I'm actually an advocate of high standards. I do believe the implementation of Common Core has been very poorly done, and some of the testing has been way over the top, but you don't throw it out right away. And I'm hoping, we're working right now, Eric is working with the House and Senate right now, and ensuring we keep the high standards, we correct some of the things being done, and frankly, a program that was done in a very quick period of time, and there are some problems with it, but we need to keep these high standards. Mm-hmm. We have
to. We're behind you on that. I think you are aware that we announced our support of the Common Core initially, and we are steadily
I talked
behind
to Mrs. Gates the other day on the telephone, and I said part of the problem is anything, part of the brand of Common Core, there's this brand out there, because no matter what goes wrong in school, they go, well, that must be Common Core. And a lot of it has nothing to do with Common Core, especially a lot of the testing, and that's what I think the business community and the education community really need to clarify. And I've got Eric going, Eric, help us on this testing thing, because I've even heard from my sister-in-law who lives with us, and she goes, God, this testing is outrageous. We're given a test, and then we don't know what's on the test, and then we don't know the feedback from the test until after the year's out, and then the student really doesn't know where they're strong and weak. Mm-hmm. So these are things we need to correct and recognize. But again, you just don't throw out the whole thing if you have some minor issues that you need to fix. And that's where we're trying to get some of the language out of the current bills, and in which we say we toss the whole thing out with no replacement and no money for a replacement. That's not a smart move. I also need to say that our budget that we presented in the governor's budget, we gave teacher pay raises. It was nowhere close to 11%. We cannot afford it, but we have a systematic approach over the next 5 to 10 years. And I think that's the way it ought to be. And we added money for textbooks. We didn't take money from the information systems for the whole state government, which would be the worst thing we can ever do, is strip IS, because IS is one of the biggest government breakdowns we have that I inherited at this point in time, and it's disastrous. And Chris Estes from my staff is just doing a great job. And we also, I feel like Perry, I can't come up with a third thing. What's that? Teacher assistants. I mean, right now, the current proposal is cutting 6,000 teacher assistants.
Mm-hmm. And also, I believe
So
you invest more in DPI.
We can't take one from the other. We need a combination. But I also want to recognize we've got a tough budget. And a lot of it's due to Medicaid. it's 25% of our budget, and the other 15%, another 15 to 20% of the budget is pensions. It's never talked about. But our state budget, 15 to 20%, I think it's about 18, is state pensions, funding state pensions. And that's not even a long-term plan on funding state pensions, because I'm having to put $100 or $200 million every year into funding the state pensions for the next year for retirees. And if any of you are running a balance sheet in your business, many who have stopped pension programs have gone to 401k, you still have old pensions on your book. But one of the best kept secrets in government is no one is funding future pensions. Wow. And that keeps me awake at night, and it's not talked about enough. But wow. You hear very little debate and discussion about that, but that's a very long-term issue for all governments, city, county, state, and federal. And again, you in business know that most businesses started changing that 10 to 15 to 20 years ago because your actuaries saw that you were in trouble. We have made almost little or no adjustments in that area. So that's a huge part of the budget that I can't touch. And then Medicaid is, just to let you know the bigger picture of Medicaid, these new regulations that came in and the new people getting on Medicaid and the implementation of Medicaid, it's very, very siloed. And Aldona Voss has come up with some Medicaid reform bills, but like the education community, at times the medical community has got a lot of silos, from managed care to hospitals to private doctors to, and everyone's just trying to survive. And the model is not sustainable from an economic or quality of health standpoint. And Secretary Voss is, as we did yesterday with doctors, we're trying to deal with it, because if we don't deal with Medicaid, we will never deal with education in North Carolina. I'm just flat out telling you, because that's where the money's being spent.
Well, you have our commitment to be right there in your office doing the work we need to do to collaborate with you and with the Department of Education to make it happen.
Let me first thank you and thank Sue Breckenridge. She's been a great partner, and we need you. We have to have the business community at the table. We have to have you walk in the halls. But I also need to have you recognize the bigger picture of some of the issues that we've had to deal with. Real quickly, as we adjourn, sure. This past year, during my I've been in office now for, 16 months, 15 months? Some people feel like it's been a decade or two, but we had to make some very difficult decisions. Very difficult decisions. We did not extend unemployment because business was paying a debt of $2.6 billion. I don't know if y'all know that, but we had a debt, the third largest debt in the country in North Carolina, of $2.6 billion that we owed the federal government. And no one knew how they were going to pay it back. We just kept taking the money. And that was kind of handed to me, my second month in office. By the way, Governor, you have a $2.6 billion debt. And they're really talking about you. So we cut up the credit card. And I need to let you know that does not survey well. It's not poll well. But as a result of that decision, probably more than any other decision, people started taking jobs. We reduced the debt, and now you're not paying extra taxes to pay the interest on the debt. You're actually paying down on the principal, and we're going to pay off the credit card 3 years earlier than anticipated. If we had continued on that current path, our debt would be over $3 billion. It's now below $2 billion. And that's good news for you. That means it's going to free up more money to hire people who are unemployed, and I encourage you to do so. And it's going to free up more money for education and other matters. But I'm telling you, it was not an easy decision. But I think we made the right decision, in addition to some other things regarding tax reform. But we're going to have to continue to make some tough decisions in education and demand that we share resources and technology and people and look for synergies of sharing, because there is no new money that's going to fall off the trees suddenly. So we've got to use what we have and grow the economy, and your input is vital. So thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you. That was great. You're always welcome. Please come back.
Thank you all very much.